Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Chris. I'm with my co-host JP Flellen, and thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Success Agent Podcast, where we're going to be focusing on helping agents sell more homes while spending less time and less money to do so with modern business tactics. You can catch us live here on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Success Agent Podcast. We'll be live there every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. But if you want to catch us on the go as well, you can just go to that Facebook page. We're on iTunes. We're on Spotify, Stitcher FM, pretty much anywhere. Just go ahead and look for us. We're there, all right? Now, last week, we had a really special episode in that we had our first guest. So if you haven't caught that episode, definitely go check that out. We brought on Chris Donaldson. Chris is an educator in real estate based out of New Orleans, doing some great things, had some great content, and we actually talked about why everyone shouldn't be a real estate agent. And ultimately what it came down to was, everyone can get into real estate, but not everyone should be a real estate agent. So you need to know why you're doing what you want to do. You need to know what your skills are before you go and do it. And then ultimately you need to combine those factors together to really figure out what your place is within the real estate industry. So moving forward this week, we're going to be focusing on something called branding, and specifically branding with intent. Now, there's a lot of content we can cover in here, but we're really going to try to streamline this down and focus it so you can really get the most value out of it without getting too technical. So we're really going to be focusing on three different things: advertising then versus now. So a lot of changes have happened over the last decade, 2 decades, even the last 3 years. A lot has changed in terms of advertising, and we're going to highlight those differences and how and why they actually matter. We're also going to be looking at the power of tracking. That kind of goes into the first topic with how advertising has changed, but tracking is really one of those important things that you need to set up initially, and it needs to be in your foundation if you're going to see lasting success. And lastly, we're going to be talking about, what's most important, which is being present and in front of people. So you're recognizable and they feel like they know you, even though they may have never ever had an actual conversation with you. So to start us off, JP, you've been in real estate for how long now?
Almost 10 years.
Okay, so in 10 years, obviously a lot has changed. 10 years ago, you were probably maybe using MySpace. Is that right?
No, I think MySpace is pretty much faded out by then.
Okay. But we may have just gotten the iPhone. Google Chrome wasn't a thing. So there's a lot of different changes.
Yeah, Chrome wasn't a thing then.
Yep. And advertising was just completely different. So why don't you talk about, what were you doing back then, or what were the top agents doing back then, 10 years ago when you first got started, in terms of branding and getting their name out there versus, your strategy now?
So when I first got into business, there was no branding. It was all just individual agent, you just got to get your name out there. You just got to go and shake hands, kiss babies, and do all this, lots of busy work, lots of there wasn't really internet leads then.
Yeah.
Zillow was just kind of trying to do the Zestimate thing and just trying to figure out what their identity was in the business. And there wasn't much of, it was all just old school tactics, handing out business cards, just kind of talk about real estate everywhere you go. Hit up your church, your small groups, your AA meetings, whatever. Even if you weren't an alcoholic, you just show up and say, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm an alcoholic," even though you're not, just so you can hand out business cards. You just did all these things just to get your name out there.
Uh-huh.
And then, and the industry has changed a lot since then. The 97% of everybody that was looking for anything real estate related was going online all of a sudden, and, people would be calling in, talking about different properties versus, you were the source, you tried to be the source of all of the information and trying to covet all of that info and feel like you're important. when in reality it's not necessarily the data that creates the relationship, it's you. And so how do you fast track that process? So that's kind of the way it was, 10 years ago.
Yeah. So then obviously that was 10 years ago, as you just said. So going forward to now, 2019, how does that compare? Like, what are you doing differently? And what results are you seeing that's just, I guess, different, or what would be out of the norm back then?
Sure. So there's a thing that's emerging in the industry now with teams, and teams are really fast tracking branding. And if
Mm,
you have a good team name, a good team that has a good reputation in the community, they're being an attraction business, and so you can create a faster identity through the systems and the processes that the team has in place in
mm,
order to get your name out there much faster. Because I think a team name carries its own weight, and so when you say this team, that team name can become more omnipresent in your community rather than trying to hash out each individual person that's on that team.
gotcha. So you're saying like there's a collective value in teams,
Collective
which
value. Yep.
which is why people are going more towards that versus back in the old days, it was literally just you and your business, and it was handing out business cards at AA meetings. Whereas now it's like, as a team, we can provide you this collective value to help you solve whatever real estate issue you have.
Yep. Think of it like this. You're out at a boat and you're fishing, right?
Uh-huh.
And you're trying to catch fish because that's what business is. You're trying to catch fish. So if you're out there and you have 35 poles in the ground, and you're trying to catch fish, or you have one gigantic net. Like, that's the difference between a team and an individual agent. Like, it's going to be much more efficient to drag one net through the water than it is to try to go out there and try to catch each individual fish with 30 individual poles.
I think that's a great analogy, but why do you think that is now? Is it because of the amount or the different types of leads that we're getting or the different sources? Or is it like social media? Like what made that change happen?
The change happened because traditional brokerages, when they onboard people, they're just like, and I think part of it is too, behind that net is advertising, marketing, coaching, regular training, being present with their agents.
Yeah.
One of the problems right now is that you come on to a brokerage and they're like, here's your keys, here's your office. Our name is good enough, so you should be successful because our name is good enough.
It's been around long enough.
And that doesn't work.
Right.
So it's also not just the name, but it's also the machine that's running behind the name.
Uh-huh.
So if you have a machine that's running, that's creating the brand recognition, that's creating the power behind the name, because the name by itself just doesn't work anymore. Like it used to be where, if you threw out a name, just automatically it was like, oh yeah. Well, now it's become so centralized, like to each individual area, that over time, like just the name by itself isn't getting the machine rolling. So it's like, okay, so what are we going to put behind that? Oh, we're going to put marketing behind that. We're going to put some dollars behind that.
Mm-hmm.
When our agents are closing deals, we're going to take a good chunk of that money and we're going to drive more business, and we're going to be omnipresent so that when people say this is the name, well, they know, oh yeah, I've seen them doing that thing and I've seen them doing this thing and I know that they're doing that thing. I'll just give them a call.
Yeah. I think that illustrates it really well, because it's like, to properly brand and advertise, And to manage everything, it's a lot of work. And to expect every single agent, the agent with the single fishing line, but 35 of them lined up in a row, to expect every single one of them to do it and to have the same feel and same effect, I think is just a shot in the dark. Like, it's just not going to happen. Versus if you have that machine that you're talking about behind a net, so all the agents, will just call them the net, and the machine is basically an engine that's pushing all of them in unison. I guess that's where the value has come from. And the reason that's happening is because of all the different avenues of business that we can now find as agents.
Right. Like if you look at it like this, the net is the name of the business. And on each side you have two two powerful machine boats pushing that net through the water.
Uh-huh.
Whereas the other problem is that you have all these individual, rods in the water. Each individual agent has different baits, different this, different that. It's not consistent branding, even if they're trying to brand themselves all as individual agents, and then they're throwing in their company brand and they're doing all this other thing and stuff like that. And I think, the best thing is no, we need a collective engine with your name on it. So I'm so-and-so agent, but I have the engine. They know the name, and now they want to do business with me because not only do they want to do business with me as an individual, they also want to do business with me as that brand. And if everybody's using the same collective bait, I think you can get market penetration much faster because everything is consistent.
Yeah. And it'd also be cheaper too in the long run. Agents may complain like, oh, I can handle that myself. Like, I don't need your help to do my branding. But if you have like one person just focusing purely on that to allow the agents to do what they need to do, their income producing activities, it's going to result in a lot more money and a lot less wasted money and time.
Right. And the other thing too is like, especially like with listings. So like with us, we're able to move our listings, I think, a lot faster because it's not just one agent with one listing. And then we have that listing just kind of like, oh, well, it's just those two. We're, the team's not going to help them out. No, we're all in it together. Like, it's not just that it's your listing. We're all in this together to get that listing sold for you, you know? So I think you can get it in and get it out much faster, like Pop-Tarts. You just drop them in 30 seconds later, Pop-Tarts pop right out, all nice and hot. Sold.
Real quick, cherry versus blueberry Pop-Tarts.
Dude, cherry. Dude, every time.
See, I'm a blueberry guy. I don't know.
Frosting, no frosting.
Oh, frosting, 100%.
Duh.
Dude. I know, those
actually, no. Pop-Tarts versus Toastettis.
You mean toaster strudels?
No. There's like you're not a Pop-Tart aficionado, dude. I used to live off of those things, dude. Back in the day, it was like,
you peasant.
Because the Toastettis had the like paper with the foil on the inside, and then Pop-Tarts just had the foil outside cover. See, man, you go back and check your Pop-Tarts, dude.
Jeez, I'm such a peasant now that I know this. All right, anyway.
My daughter just jumped in here. When I'm done, I'll meet you in a minute. Okay? All right. Hey, sometimes you get this distractions. So anyways, what are we doing?
So kind of going off of all of that and the more technical types of things. So back in the day, you would advertise with like newspapers, the yellow pages, and radio ads, like that kind of stuff. Nowadays, you have something called Facebook and Google, and these awesome little companies do a lot of tracking, or at least they can. Do you think that's made a big change in overall just how marketing is done? I mean, it's kind of a loaded question. Like,
well, I mean, the thing is, like, if it's not measurable, it doesn't exist.
Right.
And my thing has always been, people are like, oh, but if people don't see you, they don't know you. Well, the only way to get measurable anymore is if it's in print, it's dead. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you've been doing it for 30 years. I don't care if you put stuff in the newspaper. I honestly don't care, because I think that if you're spending any money in print right now, you're just throwing money away, because it's not trackable, it's not measurable, and you have no idea if anybody's seen it. I mean, I used to spend money on, we had this local magazine here that would have like all the real estate stuff in it. And it was like obnoxious, like what they were charging for a 1-page deal for a month. And then by the time it's printed, it's already antiquated information. It's already like changed 16 times. And so it was just like, why? We're in an industry that continues to keep moving, and and it's faster than you can get stuff printed. And so when somebody tries to approach me and say, hey, we're going to do these little booster thingies at the local whatever, I'm like, can you guarantee me that that this is going to be worth my money?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. I said, is there a way to track this? No. And even with the whole little, like, we had the QR code, and then we had the little like 6-digit code that you would have to do whatever you're doing. It's still not efficient or effective to do that kind of stuff. So it just came down to, like, I just don't do anything in print anymore. I can track cookies. I can track, AdWorks will, track different websites that the, different traffics come from. And I can get all these different analytics on how my money is being spent. And so to me, it's just like, if you're still using these old ways, it's like you're catering to a dying audience. If you're still doing it.
Exactly.
And your cost per lead is probably in the so high that it's not even like, why? I've heard numbers of like advertising in the paper between $3,000 and $10,000 a month.
What?
To get market penetration. Yeah, it's just stupid. Like, if the newspaper, if you're gonna spend money on the newspaper, then they should have some sort of online.
I was gonna say, that
they should get you an ROI, but then they should cut it to a huge discount, because there's no materials anymore.
Right, exactly.
What the newspaper really needs to do is do like an audio book every week, where you can just be like, today's top news stories for the area of Cheyenne, Wyoming. Somebody walked their dog down in Holiday Park. Good day. Good job, guys. Say hello to Fluffy for us.
Yeah, super big town.
Because that's news around here.
Yeah, I agree. If you're targeting people who only read print, you're either about nearing retirement yourself, or you're literally just wasting your time and money, because it's a dying breed of people. So you should move on from that. Side note. But yeah, the power of tracking and getting all that set up, that's really where the power comes down to in branding. Now, obviously, you have to put on a good persona. You have to present your brand well, but then you also need to be making sure you're tracking what's being seen and how is it being, how is it being seen? How are people interpreting it? Is it good or is it bad? Are people interested or not? And actually, you'd be really good at this segment, because you do a lot of personal branding on even just your personal Facebook page. You do a lot of live videos, just kind of inviting people into your life and showing them that, you're 100% full-time, all the time real estate. Has that really helped your business? Like, do you find people are like, oh shit, I know JP, I see him all the time on Facebook? Or has it not like gotten there yet? What results are you seeing with personal branding?
It's working. Consistency is king. If they don't know you, they can't flow you,
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where it's like, the personal branding piece comes with the being personable on Facebook, and everything honestly needs to be surrounded by either if you're going to do posting of any static level, then you want to do as much video as possible, or do like memes, like be great or whatever, in a black and white photo of you kind of doing one of these things, or whatever, like those are the kinds of things that, whatever it is that you're doing, you want to bring value. And so,
Yeah.
I think that's how people, because the biggest thing is you're going to try to learn, know, like, and trust. Those are the three things that you want to convey to your audience. And you want to know your audience. So being consistent, content, and I think people know you better by doing video. I just honestly think, I've had people recognize me that I don't know, that are like, oh yeah, I've seen you on Facebook. And I'm like, oh, okay, awesome. Cool, man. We'll keep it up. Keep following me, dude. Follow me everywhere. So
just Google me. You'll find me.
Just don't be creepy about it. You can follow me. Just don't be creepy.
Just not out of Starbucks. You can stay in your seat.
That's right. Unless you want to buy me a Starbucks, that's completely fine. But
so would you agree with this statement then? Being yourself is the most profitable person you can be?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, and because, dude, people see through BS. And if they can see you face to face, even though it's not like maybe in person or anything, they're more likely to know, like, and trust you, rather than posting a bunch of weird like posts like, oh, I'm so frustrated today, oh, my dog's pooped on the floor again today, those, like, what do I call them, phishing posts, the sympathy posts where people are just like,
oh yeah,
oh, I'm so done with this day. It's like, oh, Calgon, take me away. Like, really, like, what is that? What value are you bringing to your audience with that stuff? It's like, I think everything you do is how are you supporting your brand? And if you're giving out crap for value, then you're turning your brand into crap.
Sure. Completely. Yeah. It's really easy to do too, to get like caught up in that really just bad mindset and, just doing the actions of creating content, but the content's not valuable. So you're really just wasting your time and actually doing more damage than good. You know what I mean?
And I think, one of the things that we've done on the Titan real estate team is we constantly post our successes.
Yeah.
And so, and when we're doing that and people are attracted to seeing, okay, what's the next cool thing that they're going to do? Then they're going to want to be either A, I want to do business with you guys, or B, I want to be a part of that, because you guys are creating an impact and a lasting impression on the community. And I think that, if you're able to tee up a lot of your successes, and giving value back, then, that creates a really good brand. And, people want to be a part of that. That's why people, want to be part of McDonald's, because even though they're like, oh, they're only paying me $13 an hour, everybody loves McDonald's, so they don't really care. Like, people want to be part of Chick-fil-A because they have such a great culture, and, their customer service is top notch. And they're like, you could pay me $4 an hour just because I love to work here. Like, I used to work at Radio Shack back in the day before they closed. And because it was like, a kid in the candy store, because they had all of the, and they paid me back in the day $6 an hour. And it really I didn't even care, because it was a fun place to work. Gotcha. So I worked there for 3.5 years, making $6 an hour, just working at Radio Shack, dude. Like, it was probably one of the best jobs I ever had, dude. I did door-to-door sales, working for this company. And one of my good friends, Mike Alma from he's in South Dakota, and I paid nothing unless I sold something, and that was one of the best jobs I ever had. It taught me a lot about how to interact with customers, and learning the psychology of purchasing items. And it was all door-to-door sales, dude. I did that for a year. And it was like probably one of in my top 5 funnest jobs I've ever done. Wow. And I made $18,000 that whole year. And a lot of it was because I spent a lot of my money because we were traveling so much, but it was just a really fun job. It was fun.
Nice. Yeah. And that all
But
came
it's all
down.
about, and I think part of the branding is also creating that culture. Because I think
Yeah.
your people that work for you are your ambassadors for your brand.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so if you cultivate them, they're going to be ambassadors for the brand.
Yeah.
And then, and I think, culture over anything, because like like the Hobby Lobby story, the why he's not open on Sundays,
Right.
and that culture behind these brands, like Google, those guys grind like nobody's business, but they've created this culture at like free buffet and all these things, like I'm just going to eat my wages in food because I love working here because they've created these great environments.
Yeah.
There's a guy that's big in real estate in Omaha, and he's really big on creating culture around branding and production. And if you do a certain amount of production, he pays for a trip, cruise every year for his people. And if you reach those milestones, and so just stuff like that, where you're just like, dude, I'm gonna be here forever because I want to go on a
Yeah.
cruise that's paid for.
Yeah. So so you're pretty much saying that branding isn't just what the consumer sees, but also what they feel and really what your agents portray. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense. I had a question, but I can't remember what it was. Right before we hopped on this call, we were talking about branding branding yourself and your business as yourself versus branding as a kind of like a non-related entity, so like a team. What's your input on that and why? So I know that you have Titan Team Real Estate, which obviously has nothing to do with JP Llewellyn. Why'd you do it?
So basically, I wanted to turn it into a commodity so that at some point, if somebody that within the organization wanted to take over the Titan Real Estate team and I said, you know what, I'm out, I'm going to sell it off, I have something that is sellable, that I have an actual commodity to sell.
Okay.
Because I can't sell JP Llewellyn. I am JP Llewellyn. When JP Llewellyn stops doing real estate, JP Llewellyn is out of real estate, and then that business just dies.
Right.
Whereas if I'm Titan Real Estate Team and I say, JP Llewellyn is going to step out and I'm out, then Titan lives on. That gives me something that's sellable.
Gotcha. And it's also it makes for a better net.
It does.
More of like a blanket statement than JP Llewellyn's real estate team. You can put more power behind it, I guess.
Right.
That power can actually be transcribed better and leveraged better.
Yeah, and one thing that we do to kind of, that goes with, having a mission statement, a vision statement, having what is your goals, and, having dream boards and all this kind of stuff, and really embedding your folks into your culture so that it lives on past the time that you're with it.
Yeah. Ultimately, we like to have businesses. Well, maybe not everyone, but myself personally, and I think you as well. We want a business that will carry on even past our death.
Right.
So a legacy. We're trying to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
And you can't. It's hard to do if it's tied to your name when there's so much more than just your name. That's a really selfish way to look at business.
And it just becomes weird. Like,
yeah.
You have first name, last name, and like, it creates these awkward conversations. Like if I named it the JP Llewellyn team, and then people are like, and I'm gone, I'm not in the business anymore, and then let's say you decide I want to buy the Llewellyn team,
Right.
And then they're like, well, who's Fluellen? And then they're like, oh yeah, well, Fluellen was
This old dead guy.
years and years ago, some goofy guy that used to do video all the time, was on Facebook acting weird and stuff. And I was like, at some point it just becomes like this weird, like, well, why do you call it the Fluellen team then? Like,
yeah,
what, it's like, if you were to get really bogged down in your job and then somebody said something like, you really should just get after it like a Fluellen. Huh? Did you call me? Or whatever. Like, but if somebody said, hey, you need to get after it like a Titan, like that's so different, right?
Yeah.
And like, when I talk about, we talk about Titan a lot, and we talk about like Titans aren't born, they're made, and so like, it's just like people get behind like the meaning of joining the team and what it actually means to be a Titan, and so when people start saying, oh yeah, totally, like, I want to be a Titan in my community, when people like think of that name and they think of like, you're on top, you don't get any bigger, next thing you become is like a demigod, like that's the next step, and nobody wants to be that egotistical, right?
I don't know, some people do.
Maybe some, whatever.
There's always
But it's like one of
extremes.
those things where it's like there's just, and that was one of the things, like, I wanted to be like, how can I say I'm be number one without saying we're number one,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I was like, okay, well, Titans are, they were like, when you came in a room and people saw those Titans, they were just like, they kind of just stopped their conversations and turned, like that was that whole like, mentality behind it. And so I was like, I think I think that can work. So.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah, I think all that makes sense. It's easier to, not easier, but it's, in my opinion, and obviously yours too, better to leave a legacy that's not necessarily tied to your person, but tied to the mission that you're trying to achieve. Cool. Yeah. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to add to branding? I mean, we're kind of getting, pretty close to the end.
I just want to like tie things up and say that, branding is the face of your business, but marketing is the vehicle for the branding.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure that your advertising and your marketing are things that are driving your business toward the ultimate branding.
Yeah. And they have to be working in symbiosis too.
Right.
They're working off one another. If you have crap branding, but the best marketing, you're probably going to have half good marketing. I mean, I would expect, right? But if you had if you had great branding, but minimal marketing, it's just
like you could have the coolest. I think what people fail to realize is that like branding, like you could have the crappiest logo and still have good marketing. I think people think that because you have this logo that creates your identity, but it doesn't. I mean, think about Starbucks. Starbucks had this really terrible, awful logo when they first started, and it was like offensive, and it was really complex, and it was
it really?
And all this kind of stuff. So if you ever go on Google and search like what was Starbucks' original logo, it was terrible. And so then they ended up changing it. So
that's pretty bad.
So if you can have really good marketing and still have a business, but eventually like you want to transition from that into your identity, which is your brand.
Okay.
And so there you go.
Cool, man. We'll just end it there. So guys, thanks for joining us again. Really a great episode just on branding, our take on it. Now next week, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different that kind of lends a hand to branding, but following up as a human, and not just relying on your systems to take care of everything. Systemization is super important. Trust me, I'm all about systemization, but you also need to be able to follow up as a human, be relatable, really speak your brand when you're talking to people, and create that holistic feeling when someone's working or even interacting with your business. So yeah, that's what we're gonna be talking about next week. Looking forward to having you guys there. JP, I'm gonna include your contact information right in the bottom of the page, but why don't you just quickly, look at how can people get a hold of you, and what can they expect?
Yeah, if you want to get a hold of me for a free 30-minute coaching call, you can give me a call at 307-772-1184. That's also going to be in the show notes, as well as you can reach me at james.fluellen@gmail.com, or there's going to be a link to all of my social media links in the notes as well. So slots are filling up fast, so give me a call and we'll talk some real estate.
Yeah. Cool, guys. And if you need to get a hold of me, I just recommend shooting me a message through the Success Agent Podcast Facebook page. Or if you want to email me, that works too, at chris.successagent@gmail.com. And I'm also going to include a link to all the platforms that we're on, so that, if you're an iPhone user and you want to take us on the go, definitely subscribe to us on iTunes. We update that every single week. New episodes getting uploaded all the time. And you can take us on the go, which would be awesome. If you end up doing that, please give us a rating. That will really help in the future, especially if you're finding value out of this. That would be awesome. So until then, guys, we'll talk then.
Peace.
All right. Catch you later, man.